I'm joined now by the Secretary of State for Culture, Media and Sport, Lucy Frazer. Great to have you on the programme today. Thanks for being with us.
Good to be here.
So the King's speech contained the most words in a monarch speech since 2005, but the fewest bills since 2014. A lot of words, but not much action.
I wouldn't agree with that. I think what it did was build on a foundation of work that we've already set in train. So one of our big priorities is ensuring that we get down the cost of living, we get inflation down. You've seen that, we grow the economy. And there were bills in there to grow the economy. What we've said we're going to do is to ensure that we protect the NHS, and we've got a workforce plan to do that. And so what you saw was protecting communities and making our streets safer.
And there's a bit on your brief as well, legislation to remove the threat of unlimited fines for newspapers that don't sign up to a particular press regulator. I mean, is that really the biggest priority for Brits ahead of an election?
Well, that's a few clauses in a media bill. And what the media bill does is make sure that our media is ready for this new technological age, that our public service broadcasters, get the prominence that they need in the new smartphone age. It makes sure that, you can get the channels that you want on radio and your smart speaker. And yes, it is really important that we bring in Section 40, because what it does is preserve the freedom of the press. And the freedom of the press is one of our tenets of democracy.
Sounds a bit like a bung to the newspapers ahead of a general election campaign.
It's absolutely not. It's a really, really important part of our democracy to ensure that newspapers can publish without fear of having a costs order against them, even when they win. It's been a manifesto commitment in a number of our manifestos, and now we're able to bring it forward because we've got the media bill being introduced very shortly.
And perhaps some of the strongest headlines were around crime, tougher sentences for the most serious sexual offences. But the reality, of course, is that prisons are full. And I just want to talk about a bit that, you're not shouting about published today, this sentence here. The government will introduce a presumption in favour of a suspended sentence for custodial sentences of less than a year. So in other words, if you get a sentence of less than a year, as many, for example, stalkers do, you're not going to go to jail. I mean, you say you're tough on crime, but if you look at the detail, it feels like it just crumbles.
I wouldn't agree with that. I think what we're doing is striking the right balance for those people who need to go to prison, who have committed really heinous offences. So we're increasing the sentences for people who have committed murder and rape together. And they will not. Their whole life sentence means a whole life sentence. So that's at one end of the spectrum. And I think that's what victims feel they need and they absolutely deserve. And then you mentioned shorter sentences. So I was a justice minister for a number of years. And I was prisons minister. And what I saw, that people were committing crimes, low-level crimes, and they were going in and out of prison, and it was just this revolving door because they weren't in long enough to be rehabilitated.
At the same time, though, last year, 11,000 people were jailed for 12 months or less for harassment, stalking, image-based abuse. Are you saying that these people don't deserve custodial sentences?
Well, of course, those are serious offences, and victims will want to see justice. But what we need to ensure as well is that we rehabilitate people, because what we need to ensure is that we get crime down. 80% of people in our prisons have been in our prisons before. So we're just seeing the same people coming through. And what we know is that if you get someone a job, if you get someone a home, and if you get them off drugs, they're less likely to commit offences. We can do that if they're not in and out of prison the whole time. When they go into prison, they lose their home, they lose their job, they often lose their contacts to their family. And so what we want to ensure is that we break that cycle to protect communities and make them safer.
Now, I wondered if there's something you could clear up for me. Sam Coates was just talking about it earlier. Right, over the last week, the Home Secretary has spent an awful lot of time talking about stopping tents that are used by homeless people. But there's nothing in the King's speech on it, no legislation. So what's going on? Is she just freelancing? Well, what's happening?
I haven't been in extensive conversations with the Home Secretary, as you have mentioned.
Come on, you must have seen the headlines. You've seen the comments.
Yes, you asked me what was going on. What I think is going on is that the government is absolutely committed to tackling rough sleeping and has done a number of things in order to tackle what is a very, very serious issue in our society. So I mentioned I was prisons minister. One of the things that I'm really proud of that I did was work to ensure when people come out of prison, they get a home, as I mentioned. Otherwise,
What's
they're more
going on
likely
with this tent?
to.
Is this just disappeared? Is it happening? Is it not happening? It's a bit shambolic.
Well, I've been.
You don't know.
I've been focusing on the bills that I've got in the King's Speech. Those are the media bill, which we've talked about, and a bill for football regulation. If you specifically want to talk about tents and what's happening with, I suggest you have that conversation with the
Home Secretary, if you're listening. Lucy said you need to get on the show, so yeah, let's do it. I just want to talk about the Home Secretary. I just want to read out a tweet by the Conservative MP Richard Graham. He's tweeted today to say, tone matters. It's our duty to calm, not inflame, to reduce, not increase tensions. The language of the Home Secretary, whether on tents or on marches, is unhelpful to cohesion in our communities and is not in my name. He's not the only one. I just want to play, if I may, a little clip of Suella Braverman, the Conservative peer who was on this programme last night. This is what she had to say.
I think she's dangerous and she's divisive. If you look at her rhetoric, it is always about pitching A against B. I've said this before. We have now, sadly, some of my colleagues in government who project as patriots, but they are indeed arsonists. They set this country alight. They pit community against community. They create these fires, and that is not the job of a government. The job of a government is to keep us all safe, and you do that by creating a sense of ease, not by fighting culture wars.
Do you agree with Suella Braverman?
I agree that tone matters in a debate, and I agree that, well, what I think is that what people want us to do is to take action on the things that matter to them. On this particular matter.
Do you think the Home Secretary has got the tone right?
I think she expresses views on things that she cares about, and what she's talking about is we need to ensure that we need to tackle rough sleeping. It's inappropriate that people are sleeping on the streets. There are underlying problems. I wouldn't have used the language that the Home Secretary used. These are serious issues that we need to tackle, and the issue we need to tackle is to ensure that we eradicate rough sleeping, and that is what the government is absolutely committed to doing.
I want to talk to you a little bit about the COVID inquiry, if I may, as well, which is, it hasn't been the main headlines today because of the King's Speech, but it's rumbling on. Today, Eddie Lister, one of Boris Johnson's closest advisors at the COVID inquiry today. Now, he said that Boris Johnson did say he would rather let the bodies pile high than impose another lockdown in September 2020. Now, Boris Johnson has denied saying that several times. Is Boris Johnson a liar?
So you start off by saying that we're going to talk about the COVID inquiry. We've set up an inquiry to understand some really serious issues, and that's what I think we should be focusing on, not who said what when.
Well, what the Prime Minister said at the time is quite important, isn't it? That's the whole...
Well, what is important...
guides everything.
What is important and what this inquiry is set up to do is to learn lessons for the future. In the event that we had another COVID pandemic or other pandemic, how would we tackle it? A number of people lost their lives during the pandemic. The government had to make very serious decisions in serious times. And we rightly set up the inquiry to examine those things, and that's exactly what it's doing.
Is Boris Johnson a liar?
Boris Johnson was the Prime Minister of this country. He did a number of things that have made our country, we voted for Brexit. He delivered Brexit.
Sounds like a Wikipedia entry.
He was obviously the Prime Minister during the pandemic, and he got a vaccine before any other country. So he achieved a great deal. Obviously, given the circumstances of his resignation, I think he admitted he made some mistakes as well.
OK, thank you very much. Lucy Frazer on the programme this evening. Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you.